Hey guys,
Hey,
welcome to the webcast. I'm Chris.
I'm Jordan.
So, today we have some cool stuff in store for you. It's pretty exciting. We're going to be talking about passwords.
And keeping your data safe.
That's a good one. We like data. We like to keep it safe. So, I guess we have a few announcements. I mean, we want to call out that there's actually the Inventory 13 public beta out there. Please check it out.
Yes.
You know you're requesting it. We love it. So that's what we want, right? Mm-hmm. Cool. Awesome. The biggest feature in that one is the central server. You might be familiar with that one from the Deploy 13 one, so give it a roll.
Similar feel, it just will tie in really well with the central server on Deploy.
Should be good.
The other thing we want to point out is the minimum version now. Go for it, Chris.
Good call. So as of this last Tuesday, Mountain Standard Time, we updated the collection library and the package library to be version 12 or higher. So if you're using prior versions of Inventory or Deploy, you will no longer get updates to the collection library and package library. So do us a favor, do yourself a favor, and upgrade, because you're going to have a good time. So, that's I think that's it for the news. Though I kind of want to dive right into this. This is something that I feel very strongly about, a topic of mine. I've written a few blogs on this.
I've done the opposite end.
I watched him do it.
What those of you don't know is it's a good story. We'll tell you sometime. So, anyway, I say we just dive on in and talk about encryption and passwords. Yes. Right? So, why would we encrypt passwords?
Mostly so you don't lose your job, because you lose your data, you lose your job.
It's a really good reason. Yeah?
Well, I absolutely agree with that. You know, passwords are like underwear. You should change them often. Don't leave them on your desk, and for heaven's sake, do not share them with anyone.
I'm so glad he said that. That was actually half. I was expecting that. I'm so happy. That makes me so happy. So the whole point is you want to keep your data safe, right? Those of us who use PowerShell or any other application that you can type stuff in, you might be concerned that you're sending passwords if you're just typing them in directly, because if you send them across to another machine, who knows what's happening in transit? Who knows what's happening when people might be snooping, right? So it's a good idea to encrypt it.
Yes.
In other words, kind of make it so that it's a little more difficult to do. So anyway, I say we just dive right in and talk about it.
All right.
So we created some scripts here. I'm not going to go through these. They're in the bonus content. Take a look at those. Follow along. You're not going to hear a chime when we turn the page. Sorry. So, but we want to show you the different ways that you can take data and encrypt it.
You know, Chris, if you had told me in advance, I would have added one. But chime.
Darn. So, in any case, chime list. Just mentally note the chime there. So, when we do that, see, hey, Lex is even
We've got an improvisation here.
So we actually have these scripts to create these passwords that you create them to encrypt them. So we're going to do that. We're just going to run through it. So follow along if you can. We've also included some example tools and packages for you to follow along. So really, what it comes down to is there's a few different ways you can actually use passwords or lack thereof in your scripts, right?
Yeah, there's really 3 secure ways to go about it.
Sure.
And with this, there's the more mobile it is, the less secure it is, but the 3 versions we're going over are all secure.
Cool. That's right. So, I mean, you might be familiar with typing your password in clear text. That's to say that you type it. So if I say, this is my password, that's not very secure. I can see this.
Even though
Jordan can see this.
it is your password.
I guess I'm
not
changing that when you get back to
I
the
won't
desk.
admit to it.
Divulging that information. That is not my password. In fact, anyway. So, moving on, we actually just want to show you the examples of how to take the different passwords and actually create an encrypted password file that you can then reference inside your different scripts, so you can do automation and actually have a good time. A secure good time. So, the ways he's talking about, the secure ways, are first and foremost is prompting. Most of you who have done credentials are probably familiar with the get credential commandlet. This actually creates a PS credential object after it prompts you for username and password. So here, if we type in my username, my password, that will actually create here a secure string object. That is for the password, it'll create a credential object that has the password kind of encrypted already for you. So you guys probably are familiar with that. It works well.
Yeah, it is probably the most secure, but it requires input every time you run the script.
Exactly. So we'll actually show an example of this and why it might be appropriate at times. But for the most part, if you're actually using this with PDQ deploy and deploying a package, you're not going to be able to do that because you don't want a script to run on the target machine asking for a password that no one can actually give input to. So, bad. So, the cool thing is we can actually do all of this and for you. So here we have this other method. It's called the DPAPI method. It's the common method. Here's how you create it. So method 1, we're just going to create it from the clear text here, and then all you do is you convert it to the secure string to use and create and have fun with, right? Same thing here. We're going to prompt. Here's the other prompt right here. We can run that and actually see a prompt for that and type in my password. It's kind of obfuscated so you don't see it, and life is good. The other ways you can do that is with a key that Jordan mentioned, right?
Yeah, so with the key, I guess the DP API you can run on the machine you built the credential on with that user account. No other user can use it.
Yep.
So that's one where if you're always going to be running from a single machine, you can set up that way and you can set it to run whenever.
Absolutely. And I have an example of this that I kind of want to dive into, but before we do we have any questions?
Yeah, we can take one.
So,
We actually have a fantastic question from Timo. We're just going to say it's a fantastimo question. Okay. I want to deploy a PowerShell file, little g GUI compiled to exe to my users, which give them the opportunity to create a special file structure under a name that they enter. I want to restrict the NTFS rights for creation to a special user and would therefore encrypt the user data in my script. What can I do to have maximum security? Sincerely, Fantastimo S.
hi, Timo. Thanks for the question.
So
Any thoughts?
as I'm reading it, the main file structure is already built, and he just wants the user to build their almost like their own home drive almost when they run it.
Okay.
If that's the case, then he could just set the credentials to ask the user when they run it on their desktop, and that should that should get it to build it. And then you
Okay.
can also do a set ACL there to lock down the file NTFS permissions.
Oh, good call. One thing you might run into though is if you're having the users run this, so you can encrypt this with our mobile way of using an AES key to encrypt your passwords. But in order for the users to run a script, if it's running as them, they need to have access to that key, or for that password file and that key. And if they have that, that's essentially handing out the keys to decrypt anything you've encrypted that with. So be warned. If you're doing this through deploy, you can actually create a package and then do run as logged on. Deploy user interactive is probably the way to go about it. And then inside the package for your script, you would actually include the steps that I'm about to show you right now. So here's an example. I have an example here, step 1, of where I'm actually going to change the user account on a target machine to use from whatever it's set to a different user and password. It could be the same user and password. It could be, same user, different password. But this is just an example of using that. So in order to do that, we actually have to create our password and AES key. And so I'm actually going to pull up PowerShell here because PowerShell. And so here I am actually going to create this key. It's an AES key, so it's a 16, 24, 32 byte key. So I'm just randomly generating that. That's what this hoopla is right there. So I'm going to create this key first. It's going to be in this location, C, AES key. And I'm going to create this password. It's going to prompt me for the password. And I'm just going to type this password as, this is my password. And it put them in the root of this computer, so I'm actually going to go grab that and move it because I don't like leaving things at the root, but that's where I kept it. So look at all my leftover stuff. So
I guess while clearing that, one important thing is if anyone gets the key and the password file, anyone can use it. So it's probably best to keep the key and the password in a separate folder, and make sure that your permissions are set very tight so only the people that you want access can get that.
yes, I actually think I mistyped my password here. So live, we like mistyping passwords. So I'm going to copy that again. So we are going to change this because we want to change, I actually did a dummy password, but I forget that I'm actually changing the service account, which actually has to have a real password and user account. So, oh, rookie mistakes. So I'm actually going to use this account here, defining the script. I have this package available. Go download it on a bonus content. You can follow along. And I'm just grabbing that. I'm going to change the Xbox network service because we don't use that, and I don't mind changing it. So I'm going to change that, not save the change I just did. Oh, actually, you know what? I need to point that to the temp directory here. Oh, I am. Good. So I am actually, at this point, one thing to point out is the keys, because you created them locally on your machine, when you copy them to the target, you need to send over your keys with them, or you need to reference in your script to the keys directly, because you need to have them available, right? In this case, I'm just going to copy them over with the package, and then have them just use a local relative path there. So, yeah.
So, Chris, when you do that, when you're done, are you going to delete those keys? Because I can see if you leave those, man.
Cool thing is this goes over to the deploy runner directory, which is created on the fly and then deleted after it's done.
Okay, so
So,
it is secure,
yes.
and they
Yes.
will be gone when it's finished.
Yes. You can also do it in like a lockdown file share somewhere and actually have those NTF permissions or share permissions, however you're accessing that, locked down to the point where only the deploy user credential can actually access that. And that'll probably be a really good way of doing that. Thoughts? And I'll show you how to do that in a sec here. But let's do Guinness, let's do Fry, because let's do a couple machines here. So we're going to deploy this and change that service. And here's the service I'm talking about. I think it's this guy, the networking service. Right now it's set to local system. We're going to change that once the deployment's complete. Guinness, successful, wonderful. So we'll go over here, I'll hit F5, refresh. Notice it changed to Deadwood Reg. So that's a really good example of using a secure password to actually do something useful.
Yeah, if you don't have, I guess, access to group policy, which could also do that for you if you needed it too.
Yeah, group policy is awesome. So props to group policy, but we're not using that today. Fry as well, we'll actually show that as well over on Fry. I have the service up right here, hit refresh. And that too is now, it's really tiny, hard to see. Wow, so squint, it changed, promise. All right, so, all right. Let's do it, let's take a question.
Dear Chris and Jordan, how can I update a local admin password with PowerShell and keep the new password encrypted? NetUser works, but it's not encrypted when pushing out through deploy. Thanks in advance, David R.
Hello, David, thanks for the question.
I actually think you've pre-built a tool that would do. No, yours was Active Directory.
Yeah, so I do Active Directory. So if we're talking about local users, two thoughts. First off, NetUser is wonderful. I actually use that myself still. You can actually run NetUser in PowerShell. If I pull up PowerShell and just run, let's just say NetUser, you can see that it runs just the way you would expect. So because it runs that way, you can then pipe in some fancy passwords. So in this case, we actually created the file with our key here that we just used. In fact, we can actually even create a new one here. I'll just create a new one, run that again, my password. And then I'm going to load up another script, which is in the bonus content, to create a credential with the password file and AES key. And I'm actually going to reference what I just created at the root directory for my password and key, noted here. And it's actually going to read those, and we're going to create a credential with it. And then we're going to actually use that credential as part of the net user. So username, I can see a mistake here. Wow, okay, there's that. So we're going to run that. We're going to run that and create a credential object. Yes. So now we have this my credential object, which has the username and the password. In order to see the password and use it in NetUser, you could do something like NetUser. I believe the syntax is the username, so Corgi, and the next line is password, I think, in quotes. So if I was to do, let's find out. Let's actually look at the NetUser add. Yes, okay. So NetUser Corgi. In this case, you can actually reference the password from the credential. You just have to make sure it's in string, not the secure string. So here's where your password would go, and then add, obviously. So in order to display that, I'll show you how to do that. You do the my credential dot get network credential dot password and my passwords. So I can use that verbatim, or I can even save it in another variable. Pass equals that. Then I can do net user corgi, and I can just do pass and then add. I might have to put the pass in quotes depending on how it is, but then command can be completed successfully, net user, and you will see that I actually have created a new account called Corgi, and it uses that password, which was encrypted. When it runs the command, since we have to decrypt it, that's exactly what's going to happen, is it's going to, for that brief moment, put it as a regular string, but I hope that answers the question. Yeah? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Good question. So, speaking of other passwords, though, we have some cool examples in inventory to use kind of along the same lines, using passwords where you might not normally think about using them. Jordan mentioned one, which was the Active Directory reset password, which we created a little tool here to actually prompt for the username and password in Active Directory. Pull it up, download it, check it out. It's awesome. All you have to do is say, go to Tools, Skill Use Passwords, and click. Yeah. Cool.
Do Lex.
Okay, let's reset Lex's password.
It's something difficult like password one.
So I have a user called Joe Coffee. I will type in a new password. Hear my clickety clacking. I'm not looking at my password. I like to live on the edge. Fortunately, what it's going to do is I have it so it's just kind of showing what would happen if I ran that, so it's not actually changing the password. But the cool thing is you could always change it again if you mistype it. So
It's not using Joe's password to do it, it's using the admin password you
yes,
supplied.
yep, it's overriding it and saying, no, this will be your password. So that's a cool way of doing it, and the actual way that we do this, in this one, we're actually prompting for it. So if you noticed here, we're actually using this command called readhost. Readhost is the way that you can actually prompt. So read host.
Chris, you can use the highlighter instead of selecting it.
I have it. Like I do both. It's kind of weird. I try. Prompt.
And we
then
appreciate you trying.
Enter your passwords. And when you run this, it'll actually say, what's your password? And you give it a password, and it gives it back as a secure string. So that's how we do this, and then create a credential based off that. So yeah, question's great. We love them.
Dear Chris, dear Jordan, can you use PowerShell to uninstall ClickOnce apps using deploy? Sincerely, Dan S.
Hi, Dan. Yes, you can, absolutely. Any one of our uninstalled Microsoft Office, or at least the newer ones that use ClickOnce, like 2013 on, or maybe 10 might have it as well, I don't remember. Those actually include kind of a nice little clause, like if it is ClickOnce, use this method. If not, use this method. It's right there in there. If you download those, you can take a look at those scripts and actually look at that. In fact, let's show you what I'm talking about. So we have the uninstalled Microsoft Office scripts. So let's get 2013. That's a fun one. Packages. Where are you? So if I'm just going to go into the step, see where it's installed, and go straight to here, and I'm going to edit this. You can see right here, this is how we do that in Microsoft Office, is we take the uninstall string from the registry, from the uninstalled string location for all the applications that are installed, and then we append this display level equals false to make it silent, and it does it silently. It's just that simple. So hope that answers your question. If you have any questions, please contact support. I don't know if you have any input.
I think you should test that on, I don't know, Chase's machine. See if that works. Yeah, launch that one. Let's start messing with people.
But he's out of the office.
It wouldn't be fun because he's out of office. Yeah.
It'll be funnier when he gets back. What happened? What has Lex done? Since that's the default answer.
He assumes correctly.
It's a pretty good assumption, isn't it, though?
It's always a good time. So
Educated guess.
But so going back to this, there's also one other way I kind of want to show you how to do passwords. And this is the really cool one, especially if you're running them locally. So we keep saying the word DPAPI. That stands for the Data Protection API. If you were to look up the class itself for .NET, you can get in the weeds pretty quick. I'm not going to show that, but you should look it up if you're interested. So the DPAPI, using DPAPI means it's actually tied to your local profile on this local machine. So if I create a password file using the DPAPI, he can't use it on the same machine unless he's my user.
Even if you got a copy of it, unless he's logged in with your account.
Exactly.
Work.
In fact, I kind of want to show what would happen, what you'll see. So if you actually do that with no key, that's what we mean by DPAPI. When you actually specify a key, you're specifying an AES key. In this case, we're just creating it from DPAPI by default. So in this case, we'll actually use get credential to get the password, and I'll run that. So here I'm typing user, type in my password. It's going to the root drive. We can see that here. I'm actually going to go take that from the root drive, and I'm going to copy it to one of my other machines. Take this password. I'm going to copy it to Fry. Copy, replace. And if I run this command for get content, to get that and try and find the contents of that, this is the error you're going to see. Key not valid for use in specified state. That is the important thing to know. That's what makes it safe. You cannot run this on any other machine or user profile. The only one that can do it is currently on Guinness. So, isn't that pretty fancy?
I'm a fan.
You're a fan? Good. All right. So,
I mean, did we ever show what it looks like when it is encrypted, just so...
oh yeah, we should totally show that. That's a good call. So, what do we mean when we say it's encrypted, right? So, if we actually have that, we actually have this secure string stored as password here in this variable. So we have password. It just says you're a secure string. What does that mean? What does it mean?
It means that we can't just see it with our, I guess, common eye.
Yeah, so we're going to compute it from Secure string, I think, is the... Nope, convert to secure string is what I want to do. Secure string, we're going to do as plain text. We're going to force that. That's not what I'm doing. What am I doing? Convert from secure string. Because you are a secure string. Hello, I got to think out loud here. This is what it looks like. Just a bunch of garbage, right? So if anybody opens that up, this is what they see. So when I copy this to Fry, if I open this up to Fry, I'm sneaky thinking, oh, you know what? I'll get around this by just opening it up as a file. Ha ha ha. Well, yeah, that's what I'm going to see. But that means nothing. So
You sure it's ha-ha, not ha-ha?
it could be more of a ha-ha or even a ho-ho. But regardless, your data's safe. So that's the important part. So that's a good call. We should definitely show that. And that's how it actually stores it. So it's not easily read or decrypted. So do we have another question?
Dear Chris and Jordan, I have a question about running remote PowerShell commands from PDQ inventory. I can get this to work, get net firewall rule, but I get an error when I try to add qualifiers. Nerd, blah, blah, blah. Essentially an unexpected token error. I assume it has to do with spaces and that it's likely just something I am missing with how PowerShell works. Sincerely, Valerie Little Winky symbol.
Okay. Can we leave that up just for a moment?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to try doing that myself here. Because I actually think if you're getting an unexpected token error, my guess is that you might have copied and pasted it from somewhere. Those dashes look really long. So if we do
That might just be the font, but
rule,
But if the font isn't in Unicode, then we'd have a hard time
yeah.
solving it when we ran it with inventory.
Let's see, it is dot enable equals true.
right now what Chris is he's typing what you've got in that question. So
Terribly.
So Jordan, while Chris is typing that question, I just wanted to make sure, when you guys send the password and the encrypted password and the key to decrypt it, you have to send both those so that you guys can actually use the password on the remote machine.
Yeah, without the key, it's just going to see the jumbled letters that we showed earlier.
And it won't work, basically.
It won't work at all, no.
Okay. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Thanks.
Okay, so I've typed it out and I've run it successfully. This is probably the results you're expecting. My guess is that you probably copied something from the web. This is a very, very common thing that happens to all of us. Quotes and dashes. A lot of times when on the web, especially if it's like a WordPress place, by default the quotes are curly. It doesn't work. Except in the IIC it will work, but we're doing some conversions to here to Unicode. But
yeah, it's like a Unicode issue or a
yeah, that's exactly what it
special
is.
HTML character.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. And so my guess is that check your code, replace those dashes, actually type in the dash again to make sure. And I bet that's what you're seeing. If it's not, contact support, they'll get with me and we'll take a look at it. I'm fairly certain that's what it is though.
It might also be single quotes too, because if you see, we've got the those special quotes there.
Oh, are they the curly ones?
Yeah, the curly quotes.
Oh,
So,
yeah, could be that as well. Absolutely.
yeah,
So
check both those things.
yeah, absolutely. Good question. That's a very, very common issue that everybody runs into, myself included. So, have you run into it?
Not with deploy, but I have copied over a command that wouldn't run for me.
Ha! Okay, awesome. One more method I do want to show you for convenience, especially if you're using a username and password that you want to encrypt. We actually use a cool little commandlet called export and import CLI XML. This actually takes objects that you get as a result and basically puts them out as XML. So cool thing is when you do it with a credential object, it takes the secure string and you can actually see the encrypted, like the gobbledygook that we showed you. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, so it's still using the DP API. It's just putting it in XML format that's just easier for some people to read.
Yep, so I'm going to run this script and do corgi guy, and the password is not my password. It's going to export that to ccredential.txt. I'm actually going to open up a separate PowerShell window just to show you that it's not related. So credential, here we have, and actually I'll show you an example here as well. I actually have the creation of it while using it. So it's right here, import CLI XML. This is all we're doing, is just that command so you actually see it while I'm typing it. But so we'll do that. We'll do credential equals import, if I can spell, import CLI XML, path, and then I know I just type C this, credential.txt. So when I do that, the credential object is created. I have the username, Corgi guy, and then I also have the password. Not my password. It's not, except it is in this case. So, yeah,
Yeah, I'm swayed.
yeah. There is one more method of doing passwords I do want to touch on a little bit, which is using certificates, but that's kind of a deep topic sometimes because I want to show how to sign scripts with a certificate as well as creating your passwords with certificates. So I might be doing a separate blog or video with that. So for those of you in the background going, but what about certificates? That's why. So
Yeah, that could be its own webcast. There's a lot to go into that.
it really could. There's a lot of info that you can do with that. But I use that import CLI XML with this. I actually created a tool that is so awesome. It's so simple and beautiful. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm actually using that same credential file that we exported using the export CLI XML, and then I'm using that to run PuTTY to SSH into another server. Cool. Which means I actually got to go type in correct credentials. Let's go do that. Otherwise, that would be a bad time. So I'll just use this one that we just did. And I will type in, I think this was my username and password. We're going to find out live. That's how we roll. So PuTTY, I want to PuTTY into this wonderful computer that we have called Linux example, because it's an example.
It has a
Linux.
long storied history in our environment.
It is. Tools. PuTTY.
Oh, let's
Bam.
let's
Check it
get the
out.
Windows centered.
Here we go. I am there. Look at that. Look at me listing those directory contents there. Oh my goodness. I am connected. I am Leet Haxor.
It's a Linux box.
That's right. Yes, it is.
Don't mock the Linux.
I'm not. I admire it.
So saith Lex. Also me, because I'm part particular to it as well.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of it. Do we have any other questions to go over?
We can throw another one up, at least.
Oh.
We have a fog question from Stephen V. The fog client runs as local system. This means that the PowerShell.exe process launched via a snap-in will run in that context, and invoke command will inherently try that credential. Can you provide an example of a credential object for the credential parameter?
All right, cool. Yeah, so two thoughts that I have. I don't know if you have any thoughts first.
Fog's pretty new to me, so this is one you're going to have to...
Okay, I love Fog. So the snap-ins are essentially kind of Fog's version of kind of what we do with packages, more or less, kind of a all-in-one environment, send over and run. So in this case, in order to get it run on a remote computer, you're going to have to stage and create that password and the key file. You're going to have to use the key file because you need it mobile, with the trade-off obviously being security, and thus you want to lock down NTFS and share permissions. But essentially what I would do is if you have the invoke command, so you have the invoke command of whoever I'm doing it to, computer, fry, credential. This is where you want to put the credential, right? You can do this any number of ways. Obviously, since you want this automated, you can't just do credential equals get credential, because that's going to prompt you. So if you use one of these other ways to create the credential on the fly, let's say with this, you could actually just copy straight up, say this, put it here, reference the location of the keys, so whatever file share you're pulling from, or as part of the snap-in, since it's running as local system, I don't think it can access network shares, so if you bundle it with the snap-in, have it go with it, reference it locally, you can then use that pre-created key file and password file, and then this credential, my credential, you just would do my credential, and then script block, do awesome stuff, close script block.
Obviously.
Yeah, awesome. Always awesome. Fog is awesome, therefore it needs awesome stuff. So, yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
Cool. Slap a bow on that. That one's good. So, yeah. All right, cool. Any other questions? I know this is kind of a good topic for people. I want to make sure people actually have answers to questions if they have them.
And our final question from Chris D. Is there a way to run/manage the Microsoft Local Administrator Password solution via PDQ?
Microsoft Local Administrator Password Solution. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that.
is.
If you're just talking about, which I'm sure you're probably not, but if, for example, if I do run and do control user passwords to, That is not pulling up. There you go. If you just want to pull up this one, yeah, you can just write what I just showed you, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not familiar with that program, but if you can run it from a command line, sure, you can absolutely do that, and then you can just create a tool with it, pop it up, and life is good. Hit us up if you have any questions. I mean, I'm more than happy to help. So, but that's it. Passwords, embrace them, love them, keep your jobs.
That's important.
Yeah, any thoughts?
Allegedly.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a subject that's pretty important for anyone that controls any system.
Yeah, it really is. So, encrypt all the things, and have a good one. That's really it. I'm Chris.
I'm Jordan.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations to Timo S. and David R., winners of PDQ swag. Also, congratulations, Valerie Winky Symbol B. You just won the vintage floppy coaster. Congratulations. Send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you back here next week.